These are the screws that need to be removed, in total 6 of them, in order to remove the torque converter from the backing plate of the engine. In order to do this, we need to remove them one by one. After removing one of them, you need to turn the engine so you can remove the other ones. Before removing the wheel, this is the passenger side wheel where the crankcase bolt is. Before checking up the car, let's just loosen the 5 nuts of the wheel. Remember to use the right hand method again. Needs to come out, the thumb into that direction, so we need to turn that way. I will use a 90mm socket and an extension bar. Same case needs to be done on the other side of the car, the other wheel. So I jacked up the car this side, also the passenger side, and I also installed the jack stand the same way as I did on the other side. Now let's remove the wheel. As you can see here, the crankcase bolt is right behind there, so it is necessary to remove this cover. It's a T25 Torx 25, a total of 8 of them, and one 10mm plastic screw. Now that all the screws has been removed, I'll remove this cover. Now we can reach this crankcase bolt in order to turn the engine just enough to remove the screws of the torque converter. Do the same thing for the removal of the cover on the other side. So the next step will be to remove the torque converter. So I will be needing to remove all 6 torques screws, and in order to do that, it is necessary all the time after removing each screw to turn the engine. Always turn the engine clockwise, that direction. So as you can see here, I'm installing the torques. I think it's torque 45 or 50, and remove the bolt. So I will be turning the engine with a 30mm socket and a extension bar. When you turn it clockwise, there is the screw. So each time you turn the engine, remove the screw and continue turning the engine clockwise and remove the rest. Alright, the 6 screws of the torque converter has been removed. Now we will proceed with the next step. That will be to remove the drive axles. In order to do that, we must remove these screws, which holds in the drive axle. I will do this on only one side, the other side will be the same. The only difference is on the passenger side, the drive axle is longer and it is held in by 2 12mm screws here, which holds the bearing of this shaft. That will be the only difference. Now let's proceed with removing this bolt. There you have it. The following steps that need to be taken is to remove this electrical connector for the ABS. Just press this one here, this clip here, and remove it. Place it somewhere safe, so when we remove this other stuff, it will not be damaged. Remember, the step we do here is the same step to the other side of the car for the other wheel. Now it is necessary to remove this caliper held in by two 50mm bolts. One here and the other one is just underneath it. These are the two bolts which held in this caliper. I will be using an extra jack stand in order to place this caliper on it. Do not let the caliper just dangling on its connection here, because it will damage it or even break. You can also use a wire or something and connect the caliper on the spring here. Alright, now that we have removed this caliper and the brake disc, it is necessary to remove this 50mm bolt here of the knuckle and the 70mm for the outer tie rod end. This is necessary so we can lower this knuckle, so we have enough room to remove this drive axle. Lightly tap this screw until it gets loose. Sometimes it will get stuck in there. That's one. And now let's remove the screw for the knuckle. This one. And the last screw that we need to remove is this 17mm bolt nut, which is of the sway bar link. In order to remove this one, both sides of the car needs to be lifted, otherwise it will be a pain to remove this one. Now we will be removing the knuckle. So now I have removed this is the shock absorber, the knuckle. So in this case it was easier for me then to remove this drive axle. The next step is, this is only applicable for the passenger side, is that I will be removing these two 12mm screws which holds in the bearing of this drive axle. These bolts can be a hassle to remove, so take your time and make sure that you have enough, make yourself some room to remove these screws. The two 12mm screws has been removed. And as you can see, for me it was easy to remove this drive axle. I am here on the drive axle of the driver's side. Sometimes it's difficult to remove this drive axle. You can use this, what do you call it? Goat paw fork. You will need to place it underneath there and lightly tap it until the drive axle comes out. Alright, most of the things have been removed, both above as underneath, and also the other side. To play it safe, I will also remove this crankshaft sensor. It's held in by this connector here and one 10mm nut. I will remove it just to play it safe. When I remove the transmission, it will not damage it. And that will be all in order to start to remove all these 14mm bolts, in order to remove this whole assembly, transmission assembly. Okay, let's remove this crankshaft sensor. This is the crankshaft sensor. It is held in by two T35 bolts, and the sensor itself is held in by this 10mm bolt nut. I have removed the whole assembly so I can show you how the crankshaft sensor is installed. Now I'm going to take a break. Okay, I will be starting with the removal of the different bolts which holds in the transmission. Most of them I will be doing off camera, so to speed up the process a little. It's fairly straightforward. Just follow the lines, like this one for example, one here, second one here, and going around until these last ones over here, 1 and 2. Alright, most of the top screws has been removed. These are the screws. I just placed them the way I removed them, so when I need to place them back, I know where they go. Some of them are longer than the other ones. Coming underneath here, as you can see, this is the ground connected to the chassis connected to the transmission body. This is a 30mm nut, and underneath there, behind it, there's the 40mm nut. As you can see, this is also necessary to remove this pipe here. This pipe actually is the pipe to the intercooler of after the turbo. Okay, in order to remove this pipe to the intercooler, I will be removing this connector over there. Let me show you. This one, I will just loosen it, remove this pipe, and I will push it aside so I can remove the remaining 14mm bolts. The connector has been removed, this 8mm bolt has been removed, and the last one, this one over here, will also be removed, also 8mm, so I can push aside this connector pipe here to the intercooler. Alright, we are almost there for removing the last screws. These last screws are the screws for this second engine transmission mount. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, there are 5 screws in this one. After removing this, we will be able to slowly remove this transmission. So let's continue. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, after removing all the bolts, you can see them here. 1, 2, 3, 4 of the engine mount below, these 2 between this engine mount, and the other ones.